Hello, people. I finished a book, Oscar Wilde, A Life in Letters. Uh, this is the second book that I've read uh, like that. Humboldt to Varnhagen, which I think I enjoyed a little bit more than this one. Not really sure that I would have cared for Oscar Wilde had I known him, had I run in his social circles, but I've never run in those kind of social circles. He was kind of a dandy. It's amazing how many of his letters he's asking somebody for money, or he's asking somebody to do something for him. And he gets very specific about what he's asking them to do. You know, sometimes it's a publisher, and he's getting real picayune about how the cover is going to look on one of his books. Kind of a tragic life that he led. He didn't live very long. You know, he lived to be 46 years old. You know, what he died of, I don't know if they could even cure that type of thing today. He had like an infection in his brain. So they certainly couldn't cure it then. It was right around the turn of the century that he died. I got some notes. It's starting to rain, so I'm going to try and rush through this. This was published in 2003, 360 pages. I'm not going to say anything about the author's name because he didn't write it. These are all letters that were written by Oscar Wilde himself. Oscar Wilde wrote A Portrait of Dorian Gray, and he also wrote a play titled The Importance of Being Earnest, and I haven't read or seen either one of those. I am curious now. I'm going to have to get A Portrait of Dorian Gray and read that. He hasn't done much, and he's kind of a famous guy, and he goes on this lecture series in America, and he goes all over America in lectures, and really I think he made the most money in his whole life on that lecture series. He was fairly successful in the United States. This is before he gets in trouble. He does a lecture in Salt Lake City, and he makes a pretty funny joke about Mormons. He jokes about how large this auditorium is, and he says it should hold 14 families at least. I was a little bit irritated because there was a few letters sprinkled around in here that are written entirely in French. I do not read French. I'm sure that there's a French edition of this book. So is the whole thing in English there? I doubt it. It's in French. I don't know why the fuck authors do that. Oscar Wilde did get married. His wife's name was Constance, and she seems like a she was a pretty wonderful woman, even after Oscar Wilde gets in trouble. He begins to travel away from her, and he's hanging out with young men, and he's a homosexual, and he has several affairs, but then he has a permanent affair with this one guy. The guy's father finds out about it, and the guy's father basically ruins Oscar Wilde in court, and he gets convicted of gross indecency. And at that time, gross indecency means butt sex, I guess. At that time, it was illegal in England, so he gets put in jail for being gay, and he has to spend 2 years in jail. Some of the letters that he writes in jail are just an ordeal to read through. But he's married before this, and he has children. And he apparently loves his wife. there's only one letter to his wife in the whole book because his wife's family destroys everything after his wife passes away. They want to erase anything to do with Oscar Wilde. And then I have a little note here, Olive Schreiner. Olive Schreiner writes a book called A South African Farm, something like that. It's a book that I know I would enjoy. She lived in Natal, and it's just another book that I have written down on my list in there that I'll probably never get. In between the letters, sprinkled through the book, are some explanatory notes. And my note here says, explanatory notes and lack thereof. Because there's some things that this guy could have explained, he didn't. And all in all, the explanatory notes were pretty good. Gross indecency. Explanatory note, page 191. There could have been a lot more of those notes. Oh, I guess I gotta read this whole fucking thing. No sooner had Wilde's libel action against the Marquis of Queensberry collapsed. The Marquis of Queensberry is his lover's father. About midday on 5th April, then the defense solicitors, Charles Russell, sent all their working papers, witness statements, and other incriminating evidence to the Director of Public Prosecutions. The DPP consulted the 2 senior law officers and the Home Secretary, and a warrant was issued for Wilde's arrest, which took place at the Cadogan Hotel at 6:20 p.m. the same evening. He was charged at Bow Street Police Court the next morning, and bail was refused, which was unusual since he was guilty only of a misdemeanor. Bosie visited Oscar almost every day while he was on remand in Holloway waiting for his trial. Bosie is the name of his lover, which began on April 26th. 2 days beforehand, the entire contents of Wilde's Tite Street home were auctioned by the sheriffs for outstanding debts. Douglas was made to go to France on the morning after a trial started for fear that he might in some way compromise Wilde's case. Douglas is also his lover. Bosie is just his nickname. Which ended on 1st May with a hung jury. A second trial was ordered. In the meantime, Wilde was released on bail and was invited to stay with the Leversons until the new trial. He was finally convicted and sentenced to 2 years hard labor on 25th May. Early in April, Constance had sent her 2 sons abroad to Switzerland, where her brother was living. Long story short, he never sees his kids again. I don't think he ever sees his wife again either. They do communicate with letters a couple of times. I already talked about the importance of being earnest. I know that they've made a movie. I've never seen it. And then just, I didn't feel comradeship with Oscar Wilde on too many issues, but it's just a little bit here that I did. Page 301, top paragraph, middle. I never came across anyone in whom the moral sense was dominant, who was not heartless, cruel, vindictive, log-stupid, and entirely lacking in the smallest sense of humanity. I'm going to have to use that, log-stupid. Moral people, as they are termed, are simple beasts. I would sooner have 50 unnatural vices than one unnatural virtue. It is unnatural virtue that makes the world, for those who suffer, such a premature hell. Wasn't a bad book. 50-50, good and bad. The more I went in the book, the more I liked it. It's kind of getting dark. I can't hardly see in the cabin to read, but I have started another one. Thank you for watching.